Hi there and welcome to SUP Antics Winter Essentials. In this video we're going to look at a few topics which will keep us shipshape and ready to paddle through the winter months. We're going to consider flat water and coastal paddling only. So if your thing is whitewater paddling, then please seek out a whitewater coach or a leader. Before we begin, let's just remind ourselves that taking part in any form of paddle sport or outdoor pursuit involves an element of assumed risk. Okay, let's go through the contents. Okay, we'll review the key differences about paddling in winter. We'll remind ourselves about some safety essentials. We'll look at clothing systems and fuel. And we'll look at how to pick a venue based on the weather and water conditions, plus the importance of having a plan B. If everyone's ready, then we'll just crack on. Key differences about paddling in the winter. Okay, hopefully this won't be a shock to us all, but in winter, it's colder and the weather tends to be more severe, plus the chance of cold water shock or severe wind chill is a great deal higher than in the summer. So we need to ensure that we have the correct clothing and can self-rescue. The hours of daylight are much shorter, so we need to pay more attention to start times, paddling speed, etc. if we are to avoid finishing in the dark. If we overrun in the summer, we can normally just push on, but now we need to be more careful with our planning and carry a head torch and spare batteries. Due to it being cold, damp and going dark sooner, there are far fewer people about on the water or the shore. So if things aren't going great, we now need to be 100% self-sufficient in raising the alarm and self-rescue. Safety essentials. We need to check that we can still swim okay in our winter clothing. Our wetsuits are thicker now, or we may have a dry suit. If we've got a dry suit, did we remember to burp it and release all the entrapped air? Wear a leash. It's our lifeline to our board, which is our primary means of flotation. Without a leash, we can quickly become separated from our board due to the wind and waves, resulting in a long swim and potentially the onset of hypothermia. In addition, launching and landing without your leash attached to the board is again a great way to lose it. I like to keep things simple, so if I'm SUP surfing, I wear a surf leash. For everything else, and I mean everything, I use a coil leash with a quick release belt. It's the safest and easiest system to use. If you haven't got one, buy one. They only cost £16 from Panda and are compatible with your existing ankle or calf leash. Oh, and don't forget to regularly inspect your leash to ensure that there's no issues with wear. Being able to confidently self-rescue with your winter clothes. We're now changing our summer gear to thick winter wetsuits or dry suits plus gloves, so we need to check we can still self-rescue. We all have our own way of doing this. Some people find a sling used as a stirrup makes this so much easier. Whichever way you use to self-rescue, please find a safe place with a friend and practice regularly so you know you can do it. I sometimes hear people bragging about they haven't fallen in over 6 months. To me this is worrying, as I wonder if they can actually self-rescue themselves if required. If you need some help, then please contact a local coach or instructor. I can guarantee that being able to self-rescue will do wonders for your self-confidence on the water. Wear a PFD or flotation device. Pick a type that you feel comfortable in wearing and can easily self-rescue. There is little point in wearing a foam PFD if you can't get back on your board while wearing it. There are lots of great designs that don't restrict movement and are thin, so they don't get in the way of self-rescue. Some people find self-rescue with a foam PFD difficult, and maybe a flotation device where you pull a toggle to inflate will help. I have my own rules with regarding which PFDs I wear in which locations. So if I'm paddling on tidal waters or on graded rivers or I'm on my own, I wear a foam PFD. If I'm in a group on inland ungraded waters, then I wear a flotation belt, the type that you pull a toggle to inflate. These are my rules. You need to think about what are your rules. Remember to kneel for launching and landing, plus in shallow water. This is going to help us avoid an injury, so if we overbalance or we fall over, it's going to stop us banging our head against the jetty or potentially spraining an ankle if we fall off in shallow water. Always carry a mobile phone in a waterproof case. Our mobile phone is our primary means of communication with the emergency services. Some phones are waterproof, but it's easy to drop a phone as they get slippery when wet. So I would always recommend a waterproof case with a secure lanyard. I always find it handy to attach a whistle to my lanyard for raising attention. It's also good to register your phone to send text messages to 999. This can be very handy in a low signal area, but you need to register first. Don't worry, it's easy. You just text register to 999. Be able to locate where you are. There's two great reasons why you need to know where you are. Number one, it's useful to check on the progress of your paddle, i.e. how far away am I from the car and can we make it back before it gets dark. Number two, if you need to call the emergency services, they're going to want to know where you are. There are some great apps out there for mobiles like What 3 Words, RYA SafeTrack and OAS Maps. It's best to look at what sort of paddling you do and select one that works best. Remember, you need to be familiar how it works. I find What 3 Words and OS Maps apps to be really easy to use and very intuitive. Bring your prescribed meds along in a waterproof bag. If you need to take medication quickly, so things like GTN spray for angina, an inhaler for asthma, or an adrenaline injector like an EpiPen for a severe allergic reaction, you definitely need to bring it along in a waterproof bag. And it's also super important that you tell someone where it is and why you need it. This means if you're struggling, someone else can quickly find it and hand it to you. A basic first aid kit is great to carry all year round, but in winter I add a few disposable heat pads as well, which are great for popping in gloves to warm up cold hands. Always paddle with a friend, it's so much safer and far more enjoyable. But also, let someone responsible know your plans, so if you don't show up for dinner, someone knows to raise the alarm. I always send a text to my other half if I'm going to be late or just to say I'm safe and about to head home. Keeping warm. We'll take a look at clothing first. Clothing is quite personal and we need to find out what works for us. But here is a starting point I have found that works quite well. We're either a wetsuit or a dry suit person, and we'll take a look at both. But whichever system I always start off with a thermal base layer or a rash layer. And let's take a look at wetsuits first. So I then use a wetsuit, so that could be a 543 or a 403. I then use some 3mm wet socks, and then I've got some 6mm boots as well. I then carry a selection of hats because maybe I go in the water and I get one wet, so I carry some spare hats in my dry bag. I'm a glasses wearer, so I always take a lanyard for my specs so I don't lose them. I take a selection of gloves, either waterproof or neoprene. Again, I can fall in the water, they can get wet during the day, so it's nice to have a few dry sets in your dry bag to put on. And we talked about PFDs and buoyancy aids. Yeah, they're actually quite good for actually keeping you warm. The other thing I find works really well with a wetsuit, especially if I've gone in the water and it's windy, so I carry a lightweight waterproof jacket and trousers, and that's really good at helping with wind chill. And the other thing that I carry in my dry bag in winter is I carry a lightweight duvet coat. So this isn't a down jacket, it's a primer loft jacket, so it doesn't really matter if it gets wet, it's still got some insulation. And I've got one that's slightly too big for me normally, so it's actually really great. I can chuck it on over the top of my wetsuit. Okay, so that's wetsuits. So if we take a look at dry suits, so again, I'll start off with the same kind of base layer. I'll put some socks on, depending how cold it is. I'll put some really thick socks on, and then yeah, either a one-piece or a two-piece dry suit. If you're actually going to buy one, I know they're quite expensive, but I would really recommend that you get one with feet in. It really does make a massive difference. Okay, so I've got my base layer, got my socks, I've got my dry suit. I'll then put my 6mm boots on, and then again I've got my selection of hats, my lanyard for my glasses, a few sets of gloves, a PFD. If I'm wearing my dry suit, I probably won't take the waterproof jacket and trousers, but I'll definitely take the lightweight coat. One of the things that we kind of need to be mindful of is we lose an awful lot of warmth through our feet, hands, our wrist, and our head. So we probably need to be super careful about those areas. Sometimes I can actually start to overheat, so the way that I try to regulate my temperature if I get too hot is I take my hat and my gloves off. And the other thing that's important is I'm also pretty conscious about when I'm pumping up and when I'm blowing the board up that I'm still warm. And again, when I'm actually packing up at the end of the day, again, I'm quite mindful about how warm I am and do I actually need to put some extra layers on. Okay, this is keeping warm continued. So keeping warm is also about fuel. So fuel for us is food and drink. So we need to make sure we've had a good breakfast or a good snack and a brew beforehand. Take a warm drink in a flask and snacks with you on the water. And if we're feeling adventurous, yeah, take a stove, brew up, and yeah, make some bacon sandwiches. It's great. Choosing a brew stop. Okay, just a few things to bear in mind. If possible, find a sunny spot. Stay out of the wind, that really helps. And lastly, remember to put an extra layer on and a hat when you stop paddling to keep you warm. Deciding where and when to go. I've got 4 questions that we need to ask ourselves. So question 1 is, have I been there before? If the answer is yes, then great. We may already be familiar with the venue, but we just need to be careful as things may have changed due to the winter conditions. So things like car parking arrangements may have changed, or that field I last parked in is now waterlogged. Water levels may be higher, affecting the safe launching and landing spots, so we need to check these out again. River levels and flow may be higher, so we need to check the river level online before we paddle, and check we can paddle upstream against the flow. And finally, shelter afforded by trees from the wind may now be reduced as they have lost their leaves. If we answer no, so no, we haven't been to that venue before, then we may need to do a recce and some homework about the venue before we paddle in order to check it out. So again, there's a few things. So what's the car parking like? How far is it to the water from the car park? What's the launching and landing spot like? Do I need a permit, license, or insurance? Are there any potentially dangerous features on that river? So is there a weir, rapids, or rocks, etc.? And are there any other craft on the water, and how big are they? Question number 2 is, what is the weather forecast? So there's a couple of things to think about here. Have I got an up-to-date detailed forecast for the whole of the duration of the paddle? So if my paddle is all day, then I need to look at the forecast from 9 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What will the actual temperature feel like, including the wind chill factor? What is the average wind speed? If it's above 10 to 12 miles an hour, then that might start to be a red flag. And the final question is, how will the wind strength and direction affect my paddling? Question number 3, what are the likely water conditions? So if I'm paddling on the coast or a tidal river or estuary, then I need to check the tide times and the sea conditions. If I'm paddling on a river, then I need to think, has it been raining, and could this affect the river level and flow? Lakes are not seriously affected by rainfall, but if the lake is large, then moderate winds can result in large waves being created. Canals are not greatly affected by rainfall, but again, the wind can make a big difference. The last question is super important. Do I have a plan B? It's all too easy to be focused on paddling at a specific date, time and venue. So when we turn up at the venue and things aren't ideal, we start to throw our rule book out of the window in order to make the poor weather or the high river level acceptable. By doing this, we can significantly change the level of risk we're exposing, not only for ourselves, but also for our paddling friends. Another risk can kick in here, which is peer pressure. We've all heard it. Come on guys, we've come all this way. It's not too bad. One solution to avoid the above situation is to monitor the weather and the river levels from home over a few days, so you can see the way that things are going, and maybe pick a couple of venues that work for the forecast. Check the forecast the night before and plan for option A with option B as a backup. If you then arrive at the venue and the weather isn't as forecast, you then have a fallback plan. So here's a couple of examples. We'd planned a trip on the River Ure at Boroughbridge, but when we arrived, the river flow is too high for all members of the group. So we changed the venue to the Ripon Canal, which won't be affected by the recent rainfall and is only a 10-minute drive away. A second example is that we've planned a trip down the coast from Seaton Carew to Teesmouth and return, but on arrival at the beach we spot the wind direction and strength is not as forecast and it's 10 to 15 miles an hour offshore. so we relocate 30 minutes drive to Eagles Cliff for a trip on the River Tees. Just remember, if you have to cancel both your Plan A and Plan B, they will still be there next week to enjoy, and hopefully you will too. Further information. We've covered a lot of ground in the last 20 minutes, and if anyone feels like they need more information about assessing the risk or interpreting the weather or how to find out about river levels or tides, then there's stacks of free information available via the SUP Safe video series. There are 8 online modules and an introduction plus a safety checklist. The subjects covered are Module 1, Review the basics and managing the risk. Module 2, Equipment, cold water shock and clothing. Module 3, Health, emergency preparedness and rescue techniques. Module 4, Caring for the environment. Module 5, Weather forecasting apps. Module 6, River level apps. Module 7, The rise and fall of the tide. And the final module, Module 8, Planning a trip. I'll leave a link to the SUP Safe videos in the YouTube video description. If you would like some on-the-water coaching, then please get in touch at dave@supantics.co.uk or visit our website at supantics.co.uk. We run one-to-one or small group sessions for safety and rescue courses, paddle improvement workshops, confidence building, and guided trips. I hope you found the Winter Essentials video interesting, and please get in touch for improvement suggestions or more information. Thanks for watching, and happy winter paddling.